Good evening and welcome back to the Upset Podcast. Tonight we are talking about changing course, a pastoral perspective. Coming up next. Hello, once again, and welcome back to the Upside Podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in this Sunday evening, and I'm even more happy that I'm here with this wonderful group of people. What's up, guys?
What's up?
Hey. You meant us. Oh, bless you.
Hey, how's it been?
Yeah,
Good.
it's all
I was
good.
wondering why, if I felt like I hadn't seen you guys in so long. That's because last week it was ladies' night,
Mhm.
and I didn't
That
see
could be
it.
why you didn't see us.
Yeah. So
Oh,
happy.
what a night.
Because we are diverse.
Yes, that's right.
The ladies did well last week. I listened to them. Fellas, you should have heard them. They were. They asked this question: what is it that you want in life? And these ladies, boy, they were polishing their spiritual apple. I just want to be saved in the kingdom. And none of them said, I wish my husband would throw the clothes in the hamper, or man, I wish I had more money or a better. They were giving all of these wonderful, glowing answers that, I said, look at Ellen G. Black, 165.
I mean, hey, if we don't want the important things first, then the rest doesn't matter, right?
Yes. I just want to know that I am a loving, giving person.
Well, when it's men's night, I want to hear what you guys say. So we'll tune in to hear your perspective. Anyway, so what's been going on, guys? What's been catching your attention? What's been?
There's a rumor out there. Well-known pastor told me, and I looked it up. I wanted to preach it so bad, but he said that Target apologized. But that is not true. That is not true. So that's a rumor going around. But they apologized for rolling back DI. But that is not true unless something changed this morning. But
I didn't hear that. I mean, but
yeah, the only thing they probably are sorry about is the bottom line. But I ain't really sorry.
Yeah, we're seeing. I'm looking at how things are dropping. You know, people were asking, are these boycotts working? And now we're starting to see some real numbers to kind of to back up that it really is showing some impact on that bottom line, as you said.
It should be noted, and this is for those who are students of prophecy. When you talk about the mark of the beast in Babylon, the main element in Revelations about the mark of the beast in Babylon. Look, Keenan is listening with rapt attention.
Well, you know why? Come on, don't do that. You know why?
But the main element of it is mercantile exchange. Remember, it says that this beast is going to stop people from doing two things, and those two things are buying and selling. And then in Revelation chapter 18, when Babylon finally meets its comeuppance, it says that the merchants of the world stood afar off and looked and said, whoa, where are we going to buy all of our goodies, and where are we going to get all of the things that we stand in need of, and the gold, the silver, and the souls of it. So it's mercantile exchange is at the heart of the last struggle of the final hours of this earth's history.
Is this Tally?
Don't you guys start.
We got to talk afterwards, Tally.
All right, let's say hello to the people. Hello, Mary. We're always glad that you're here joining us. Thanks for tuning in this evening. Thanks for tuning in. Charles, I know you've been watching the news. What's sticking out for you?
Oh, excuse me. There's a lot. I don't know. I thought about it before the show, and I said, gee, you know what? There's just so many things that are, going on in the world. I think one of the big headliners was the situation with Columbia University and being penalized. Well, I think this subject deals with all the universities that speak out in protest, and it really boiled down to the question of, do universities and colleges have the right
academic freedom
of academic freedom and free speech? And it's interesting to see this thing evolve, because there are some universities are doing what some people say are caving. Others are standing up, and administration for these institutions are bending to the wishes and the desires of their supporters, especially financially. So I'm finding that there used to be a time when universities could speak out, and you would almost expect that coming from college students and university students. But now it's almost to the point where you're afraid to speak out, because it could be penalized for that. Even the administrations are caving to donors and other supporters that don't like their speech on campus and threaten to pull funds and things like that. So that kind of stood out, because the Columbia University story was in a lot of news feeds. So that kind of attracted my attention.
Daphne was saying that she's just kind of turned off the news. And I've heard a lot of people saying that, like, every day there's so much going on that just to kind of silence the noise, so many people are just give me the highlights. But at the same time, I feel like there is so much going on that impacts us that if we're not aware, it could be to our detriment. So just trying to find that balance of being informed but not inundated with a bunch of information that causes hysteria or all the things that make people kind of
it's hard to get the truth. Depending on what news outlet you listen to, some are left-leaning, some are right-leaning, and they are quote-unquote centrist or center. But you'll find that you're listening, you might be listening to a left-leaning or right-leaning news outlet, and it does shape your thoughts and your opinions.
Yeah.
You need to have a way of finding out what is the truth, what are the facts.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll be led down the wrong path.
Yeah, I'm hearing mainstream media is just not in anymore. Those major networks, even the ones that we rely on, are not necessarily always giving us the real truth, as they say. I saw some suggestions about like listening to the BBC and some of these other, like even the news outlets online, the Black news networks. Well, there's Roland Martin or some of the others who are, tuning into those instead. But yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're going to cut our little preliminary short, because when we have guests, I get excited because I know that means we're going to have great conversation. Oh, we have someone watching from the Netherlands.
Hey, that's my guy from the military. What's up, Mac?
Oh, really? Okay. He said my brother Keenan Tyler. Oh, wow. Okay. Thanks for watching.
We served together.
Okay.
I can't tell you about that stuff, on this classified G14.
Okay.
No, I'm just playing. We was electricians in the day.
It worked though. It worked. Yeah, like I said, tonight we are happy to have some guests. We have a very interesting topic, and we always like to hear other perspectives. Not that we get tired of hearing each other all the time, never that. But it's always nice to invite guests to join us to upset the conversation even more. And so we are going to welcome two of our guests, or our two guests right now. First, we have up Dr. Lola Moore Johnston. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody.
Hi. Good evening. She comes to us from the Potomac Conference. And then we have with us also Dr. Evan Willis.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, from South Atlantic, correct? Yes, all right. Now, for those who don't know you all, just tell us very quickly how many years you've been in ministry, maybe some of your ministry passions. Lola?
So this is my 15th year in pastoral ministry. I've been in ministry overall for 18 years. My first 3 years were as a chaplain. I am the senior pastor of the Restoration Praise Center in Bowie, Maryland. I've been there almost 4 years now. I consider myself a generalist when it comes to pastoral ministry, but I have lots of interests, which include music, which include preaching, which include women's empowerment. So I'm glad to serve.
Yeah.
Just to put a tag on that which includes music, which includes preaching. This good sister is a preacher par excellence.
Yes.
But as a vocalist, I mean, she is just an extraordinary song stylist and sings with an anointing that really needs greater recognition. So she kind of undersold it a little bit, but I thought I'd gild the lily a little.
Yes. Love it. Thank you. And Dr. Willis, Evan.
Yes. So I am 14 years in pastoral ministry. When I was a senior, Dr. Moore Johnson was at Oakwood Church, and she was one of my mentors. So it's always good to see her. And then I've been pastoring the South Atlanta Conference for, like I said, the last 14 years. And I would say my passions for ministry are typically around families, youth, athletics, and education.
And where did it all start for you, Pastor Willis?
Well, I am a son of Allegheny East Conference.
Talk that talk.
Who never hired me. So let's
what? He says, I'm a son with a grudge. Good man, though. Good man. Yeah. Excellent man. Yeah. Great stock.
Yeah, and there's so much we could say about both of you. But I know that we'll get to some of that a little bit later. But thank you all so much for joining us in our discussion this evening. GP is going to lead us out, and I'm actually going to move our guests to the top here because we appreciate our guests. All right, GP.
Yeah, we're looking forward to a wonderful discussion. And in this month of March, we're celebrating Women's History Month and also March Madness. Yeah. And those of you who are sports fans know that March is always filled with madness, with upsets and bracket busters. But regardless of who you're rooting for, it behooves us to pay attention to the leadership nuggets that often transpire in the sports world. So organizations, whether in sports, business, or ministry, they are always in search of great leaders because strong leadership contributes to vision, culture, and success. And so the reality is leaders bring vision, direction, they attract talent, they drive success. And so a few years ago, when Deion Sanders was brought to Jackson State University, it wasn't just an opportunity to serve as a coach, but he began a movement that brought national attention to HBCUs, and he recruited top-tier talent like Travis Hunter. People saw him as like a savior of HBCU athletics. Now, fast forward to after all the buzz and finances brought in, when he transitioned to Colorado, there were a lot of folks who were upset because they saw it as him selling out, leaving the HBCU world to go to play for a power team, to a different team, different division. And so the question must be raised. When we talk about loyalty, when we talk about leadership, when we talk about the impact that we make, the pastors here today are going to help us figure out the question and the answers that we all are wondering. When is it wrong or right to step out of a Black-centered, a Black-led organization, or to go to a state conference where there is oftentimes white leadership? Are you a sellout? We're going to talk about some of these nuanced questions, and I just want you to put your thinking caps on because we have, as always, the brightest minds to help us unpack. For those who are wondering what a regional conference is, we'll answer that in a moment. We want to dive right into the discussion with some of the brightest guests we have today, Dr. Johnston and Evan. And I want to point this question to them. Why do you think pastors sometimes leave regional conferences or choose to work for state conferences from your perspective?
That's a great question. I'll let Dr. Moore Johnson go first.
Sure. I would love to give a little context before I answer. I was not asked, but I am also a daughter of the Allegheny East Conference.
Yes.
For my first 20 years, I was a member of the Trinity Temple Church in Newark, New Jersey. And so born and raised and reared by two members themselves who grew up at the Trinity Temple Church. And so for me, the regional work is home, regardless of where I work. There is a rooting there that will never go away. I've recently learned of the 103rd anniversary of the Trinity Temple Church that is this year, and I look forward to participating. The regional work is home. But I think that when it comes to a working relationship, that people, and I don't want to speak for everyone, I can speak for myself, that we are making working decisions about quality of life, decisions about how one's family will be impacted by this or that. And to be honest, sometimes the opportunities that are given are coming from non-regional conferences. And so I think the assumption that a person working in a state conference comes from a mindset that would even weigh whether or not working for a state conference or regional conference is an act of loyalty, I think is a leap, because I don't think that the people that I know who have made that decision have come to that decision in that way. They've been given an opportunity that makes sense and have decided to take that opportunity because the state conference versus regional conference conversation is not as loud for them as it may be for some other people.
May I jump in here? This is maybe for Latasha. Well, this is for everybody. Why did we decide to lean on this topic for tonight? Are we seeing a mass like exodus of pastors going to state conferences, or what do you think?
There are a number who are going or currently being recruited from regional to state conferences. There's a trend building, and some discussion has been started as to why this is happening. Should we be concerned? And so, yes, this is why we're talking about it. One, we have stuff that happens kind of in the pastoral realm that even members aren't necessarily even privy to, may not even be concerned about, to be honest with you. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But we want to talk about some of these trends we're seeing and kind of create understanding, because there are a lot of assumptions made about why people make certain choices. And so now we have people that can give us from their own experience why these things are happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And before Dr. Willis chimes in, I want to share my experience. When I graduated from seminary as an unsponsored seminarian, it just so happened that a state conference was the first person to give me an offer. And so I took the offer. So I ended up in the Florida conference. But it was my hope and desire to work in a regional conference, but it just didn't pan out that way. And so that was my story. But Evan, Pastor,
before you do that, could both of you have used the term state conference for those who aren't really initiated? Tell them that state is spelled W-H-I-T-E. I mean, explain it. I mean,
how do you spell regional? B-L-A-C-K?
B-L-A-C-K. Yeah. I mean, these are euphemisms. I mean, and it doesn't change how people worship in their churches or how they serve their God. But basically, we're talking about a racial divide. Am I saying that right? I mean,
paper,
from an administrative perspective.
And I would say historically so.
Historically so, yeah.
Some of those lines are moving now.
Yeah.
But from a historical perspective, absolutely.
Yeah, because if you look at many state conferences now, you'll see a lot of color. even in leadership sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And you might mistake it for a regional conference.
Yeah. We
started to call over the years, regional became a code word for Black.
Mm-hmm.
And so back in the history of the formation of regional conferences, and really, we really should define why a regional conference is a regional conference. We need to define that, because otherwise we tend to slide towards that code word of Black. Regional conferences cover a region.
Yep.
There are other conferences that may be thought of as predominantly white that are also regional conferences, because geographically they cover a region,
like Potomac,
not a state only. So I think there's a little bit of it's a little convoluted depending on the structure and the framing of your conversation about regional conferences versus state conferences. And we know that running in the background there is the racial narrative. But as you said, Dr. Johnston, that's changing now. It would behoove us to study the history of, the formation of regional conferences and why they started. I mean, I believe in one of Dr. Bradford's books, Charles Bradford, he spoke on the formation of regional conferences and why they needed to be put together. In fact, I believe some years ago, there was an action taken by North American Division that supported the formation of regional conferences.
Yeah, good old-fashioned American racism. What it is. So we are structurally racist. Structurally.
Keenan says, let's cut cross field and get right to the... Don't take Keenan long. It's raining out there. It must be racism.
Yeah.
So let's get Dr. Willis in this conversation. Dr. Willis, what are your thoughts on this topic? Why do you think pastors choose to go to state conferences or choose to remain only in a regional conference their entire ministry? What are you thinking?
So let me ask this question before I get started. Am I allowed to do you want me to give spiritual leads? Do you want me to give honest perspective and almost
keep it real,
right?
Doctor?
So spiritually is not honest with you. Go for it.
We want you to upset.
This is the upset.
I didn't say spiritually. I said spiritual lead. See, that's coding. Spiritual language. So let me say this, that I agree with Dr. Lola Moore Johnson in this fact that I think it's inappropriate to label someone a sellout or a house Negro for going to a state conference versus being at a regional conference. It's unfair, in part because much like when we talk about the history of Black education in America, when we talk about HBCUs, wanting everyone to go to HBCUs is unrealistic. So you have to have a plenary of options for people. But I think oftentimes people go to regional conferences for a myriad of reasons. I think Dr. Moore Johnson hit it on the head. Opportunity, right? In my experience, within the regional work, there are a number of churches that people seek after, right? And with a limited number of churches that people seek after, when those churches are filled, there are other talented individuals who aren't given opportunities. And so because they're not given opportunities, the state conferences use those as leverage, right? And so I know clear as day in certain territories that there are there are state conferences that are being intentional about trying to recruit Black, African-American, Afro-Caribbean pastors to lure Black and Afro-Caribbean members out of regional conferences into their churches. So I know there's intentionality, right? So in my estimation, a lot of times the way that white people operate is more corporate. And so they think about benefits package, they think about how I can do this, that, and the third. And it's very appealing and appeasing for individuals who aren't getting privilege and aren't getting certain opportunities in the regional work, right? So that's one. I think two, state conferences are a lot more geographically bound. And so, in a regional conference, you can move from New Jersey, and let's say Allegheny East, you can get moved from New Jersey to the bottom of Virginia. And that's a whole different ball game. And when you're talking about raising children, bringing them up in the world, stability is critical. State conferences offer a lot more living stability than regional conferences historically, right? If you think about Pioneer Memorial Church, Dwight Nelson was there for 30 or more years.
40 years.
40 years. So
was he really there that long?
Yes,
he was there that long.
Wow.
And so those things come off as very appealing. So I think people make pragmatic, practical decisions. What is in the best interest for my family? What is providing me the ability to hold on to housing, right? Because right now, I can speak very, very, very honestly. There are a lot of pastors who are declining better opportunities, bigger churches, because they like their 2.75 interest rate that they're locked in on where they live, and they don't want to move into New York City. They don't want to move over to California. They don't want to move into DC. They don't want to move into North Jersey from different places because I'm paying more money. I'm losing out on house. My children are starting over, and pragmatically, it's not worth it.
So like Isaiah, when God says, "Who shall we send and who will go for us?" They say, "Here am I. I got a 2.7% interest. Send somebody else."
Yeah.
Well, can I ask this question, just because y'all talking about just practically speaking? So with the retirement plan, right? You know, in the state conference, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to work 40 years before you can retire. In a regional conference, you know, you have to do 30. So do y'all even think about that, or is that something like, let's worry about that later?
I think that it depends on the financial position of the particular worker. You know, you have to weigh those considerations no matter where you work. You have to decide what you want for your pension plan. If you're going to find some other financial options that will help to reinforce your finances, or if you're just saying, you know, I would rather work in X environment for 40 years and experience X amount of whatever. I'm really trying not to be here, but you know, maybe 30 years of this is, you know, worthy of consideration, considering 40 years of that. Sometimes it's you know, I'm trying to mince my
but I think it's important to unpack the this and the that, because I know part of the discussion came from a post from Pastor Goodman about have some of our values or priorities shifted over the years. So when we say this or that, some of the this or that are things that, say, pastors 30, 40 years ago weren't necessarily considering.
Because you were spending in 5 years. Yeah, that's why.
Say that again.
Security and all those type of securities that they had.
Yeah.
But there is a context that we have to remember, and what we have to ask ourselves now is the context changed enough where it is no longer the lead dog of the sled team. And that context is there was a time when you couldn't even go into the churches from those conferences. And God forbid if you thought about being a leader, they would toss you out in your ear. And so now they're saying, hey, wait a minute. They wouldn't even talk to you before, but now they want your skills. Do you perceive that the times have changed enough where that contextual element is no longer persuasive?
Can I be honest?
No.
I mean, the reality is that if I weren't talented and popular, regional conferences wouldn't want to talk to me either. So the reality is that we're talking about the fact that there are these microaggressions and dynamics on both sides of the field. You know, GP, piggyback on him. He said earlier that, you know, there were conferences that didn't pick him up. The same thing with me. I was, you know, educated in the Adventist system and everything. The Florida conference picked me up first. So, you know, it wasn't until I became well known that there was an issue or a feeling of a slight of me not being a part of the regional conference. But there's been Black people and Caribbean people working in state conferences for a very long time, but nobody cares about them because there's no perceived benefit from their ministry. So I think that we have to be honest about how we are evaluating people, who we value, who we know is, in existence, and be honest about that, because it's not every single worker that people care are making this transition. It's not every single worker who starts a conversation. It's somebody who a particular conference feels is beneficial. And until that is not the case, and people, or there's a value, I'll say for myself, in me as a Black person, and to say, I want Lola because she is a Black person, I want to invest in her, versus what can she do for my bottom line, then I'm being evaluated as a commodity on either side. So now I get the chance to decide which side works better for me.
Let me put my radio host hat back on, because that was a great answer, but it doesn't specifically speak to the question. And that is, the question is, has the context changed enough? And the context, if I could be even draw a sharper point to it, is that there was a time when race disallowed you from even being considered, and you could not even be welcomed in the church. GP has a horror story to tell about his church when he was in the Florida conference, and it was all about race. The question I'm asking isn't about commodification. It's, has the context changed enough where race is no longer a determining factor?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I'm open to the answer. Yeah.
I'll speak to that. We once believed that America moved past a point where certain things couldn't be done, and it takes a Donald Trump to tear down and show the reality of what America is, right? And so, as long as you make, and I can't speak for every state conference, right? So let me be clear on that. But as long as you toe the company line, you have no problems. But as soon as you speak to a level of consciousness, or you highlight systemic racism, there are problems. So let me speak, for instance, I was asked, and I know white people better than white people know themselves. I was asked.
Oh, really?
Marcy, how you do that?
No, hold on a second. Yeah, he just said that. Yeah, he did.
I was invited to a church to speak on social justice. I really didn't want to do it because I know how white people respond when you talk about social justice. I pre-recorded the message. I gave it to the pastor. I told the pastor, if you don't play this for your church, no love lost. Review it. If you think they can handle it, let it ride. The level of stress that resulted. I got blacklisted in the conference.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. They called the union. They called my president.
Wow.
They complained about, they said I violated church and state. And
what church was this, Evan?
Yeah, well, can we watch it on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean,
they took it off YouTube.
Don't tell us the church.
I have a copy of the sermon.
Okay.
What church was it? Where were you? I mean, just give us the locale.
I was in the Carolina conference.
Oh, well.
Yeah. And so I know for a fact there's a pastor who put his resume at the Carolina conference, and they asked him, this is when I was in school, they asked him, can we see a picture?
Wow.
And once he sent his picture, they stopped responding. And so I think Potomac is a different territory. And there's a different reality there. But I still believe a lion's share of our church is on fire when it comes to racism.
On fire in a good way, or on fire burning up?
Burning up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm trying to tell you that, Tally, for the last couple of months, but that's another story.
So let's pivot into the sustainability of regional conferences and the required amount of loyalty and us passing the stones to the next generation to keep it going in the future, should the Lord not return. Do we need to do a better job of telling the story and emphasizing the importance of regional conferences, or have we arrived to the point where we are colorblind? We don't need these lines anymore. What are you guys' thoughts on these perspectives on the sustainability and future of regional conferences in a Browning America?
I've been thinking about that when I received the invitation. I wondered, and I don't know that the approach of only telling the story is the way to bolster sustainability. I believe that people are loyal to context where they feel valued and valuable. And so there are a host. I grew up on the River Manatawny, is that how y'all sing it? I grew up in those camp meetings singing under tents. I saw Elder Talia Farrow leading out and things like that. And that thing is in my blood, even when I go to Pine Forge now. If from that time we are pouring into young people and sharing with them that this is your territory, this is your conference, we are here to pour into you to make sure that you are all that you can be. I believe that that is the way to engender the type of loyalty that I think I hear you speaking about. Not just saying this is why we exist, this is what we are here to do, but this is how we exist to be a blessing to you. This is how your life is going to be benefited and your children's lives will be benefited. We're going to do what we can around benefits, around the way that we allocate resources, time, opportunity to make sure that you know that this is your conference.
Yeah, so I think Lola says something that is true, but I mean, I literally, when in preparation for this meeting, I was looking at the top tithing conferences in Columbia Union and Southern Union, and I'm not as critical around how we utilize our resources in the regional conferences because we have such a dearth in comparison to other territories. Like I'm in the richest union in the North American division. Florida Conference, Georgia Cumberland, which are states, slap all regional conferences that cover regions, and so they're able to hire
even Northeastern.
Well, I said Southern Union.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. But in Atlantic Union, Northeastern is the lead dog. But let's be honest, too. Atlantic Union is primarily black and brown.
Yeah.
Especially when you look
at so is Jersey Conference. I mean, so is Florida Conference.
Right. And so I would have a greater audit of how white evidence institutions withdraw resources to Garden State Academy when it turns to brown, or to Mount Vernon Academy when it turns to brown. This demonstrates a lack of concern for black and brown education and black and brown people. However, I think that Lola raises a great point, and that I think a great issue within the regional work is that historically African-American people and black people show great homage towards seniority, at times to the disregard of up and coming rising talent. And there's an expectation that you're going to be a good boy, that you're going to respect the system, that you're going to respond and be appropriate, even when they are speaking to you like you're a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, right? So, and I see this with my own eyes, right? And so white people do a great job of speaking to you respectfully while screwing you privately, and black people do a great job of speaking disrespectfully but still loving on you.
He was using a term from carpentry there when he said this.
I have a question. Two, actually. As pastors plotting a career path, has a ministry focus or ministry roadmap ever had anything to do with where you end up in terms of a conference? Has a ministry ever prioritized the industrial complex? Number one. Number two.
The conference industrial complex, Charles?
Yes. Okay. Number two. I just want your comments on an example of what I would consider racial confusion. You have Pine Forge Academy, which is predominantly Black.
Predominantly?
Yes. Well, yeah, it is Black. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I was going to ask you, must have been looking at one of the negatives. Because, but go ahead.
Not too many miles away is Blue Mountain Academy, which is, the last time I checked, was multicultural. Can you speak to why that exists right now?
Can you say more about the second question, Chuck? Can you?
Well, Blue Mountain Academy has, more racial, ethnic representation than, say, Pine Forge Academy. We know that Pine Forge Academy is Black. Can you speak to why that happens when they're just miles away? There's not even, and correct me if I'm wrong, especially those that are listening in or that are chatting, there doesn't even seem to be an intentional association with Blue Mountain Academy and Pine Forge Academy. Is that a fair assessment? And if so, why do you think that is?
Because we Black.
That's right. And the white man's ice is still colder. So some people think that.
Well, there's actually, let's be honest, there's several divides, and that is, there are people, our immigrant community here in the Adventist Church, when they come to this country, they want the very best opportunities for their children. And in the nation like ours, where the white culture reserved for themselves the best, if you wanted the best, you typically looked in their direction if you were not from the context that helped us to understand.
So you're saying like that's the standard that they aim for?
No, it's not the standard. It's that when you, for example, if you go to a white church, typically there's a parking lot, and you go downstairs, and they've got all of these nice little
ministries on.
Yeah, 10. And then you go to a Black church, which is typically, they have lesser resources. There's no parking lot, and you go in the church and you say to the pastor, thank you so much for the parking. I had someone to come and to take my car and park it for me. And the pastor, we don't have that. And that's when you realize they done stole your car, because we traditionally, Black people have had less, and everybody knows that. So if you want what's best and you're not looking through the lens of color, you say, oh, they have better things over there. That's why Black people, as soon as we marched in the 60s and they said, your children can go to any college you want, that's when you got the brain drain away from our HBCUs to Harvard and Yale and Columbia, because they had better amenities there. So it's not simply racial, but race becomes a part of the discussion.
Yeah. So, there's an initial question and a secondary question. So I'm trying to answer both. So I'm gonna answer the secondary question, then get to the initial question. I think that a lot of people say this: the world is not all Black, so I want my kids to experience a world that they're going to enter into.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that is a mistake to a certain extent. And I say that because, so I'm currently, you may not know this, I'm currently doing research on Black independent schools academically.
Is that what Allegheny East?
So, yes, some with Allegheny East. Yes.
Yeah, I know, because my wife is on that thing with you. So
yeah, but I secondarily, I'm doing research with Texas A&M on some schools in the territory and beyond. And one of my articles that I wrote called Good Soil, which examines Black Adventist education, the community-cultural wealth of those institutions. The things that Black institutions do is that they provide a navigational map to how to deal with white society. Whereas children who are sent into multicultural environments or white-dominated multicultural environments, we send them there and say, figure it out yourself. Whereas at a school like Pine Forge, school like Oakwood, Howard, however, as you're going through school, the curriculum, the instruction is bathed in your culture. It's preparing you for what's ahead of you and helps you understand when a white person says this is what they mean, and here's how you navigate that.
Did I say that out loud?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And so it's important to have that space, because if you don't have that conversation as a Black child, you'll grow up thinking you're dumb because they won't acknowledge your contributions. If you're the best athlete, they'll give a white kid who scored 3 points on the bench athlete of the year, although you scored 30 on the season, right? And so that's just, those are realities. That's research. That's history, right? And so the Black institutions do more to feed into you, although we don't have as much from a facility standpoint. Now, when we talk about a career roadmap, what I experienced when I was in seminary is that the white boys talked a lot about, I was going to pastor for 15 years and I was going to go higher. I'm going to go to the union. I'm going to go to the division. They had aspirations for the GC, right? And so I think as we're looking at this Black exodus and this exodus from ministry, I think to a certain extent, some of these people who left should have climbed higher, created space for the younger to fill in, and then begin to mentor, right? The problem is Black people, because of structural racism in the Adventist church, rarely have aspired for higher. We're happy to have Abraham Jules. We're happy to have Marcellus Robinson. We're happy to have Ron Smith in these seats. Happy to have Bradford to climb to NAD. But these were exceptional Negroes in the eyes of the populace. And so the fact that they got there, they didn't hold their spot, and they didn't feel a need to kill Tally when he was young and upcoming, right?
Oh yeah, they did. Let the record show there were many who felt the need to kill Tally.
Yeah. But I'm saying the regional work, because many times the highest seat we imagine and dream for is the seat of president, which I think is dying a little bit in this generation, but the highest seat we attain for is president. My job is to hold that seat as long as possible and to kill any up and rising star because they're a threat to my throne.
So you're saying you have in a regional conference, you're saying that that's a common theme that you have seen throughout the years. Is that what you're saying?
Historically.
That's why
we at times have crab in a bear mentality. I got to pull you down because if you're rising too high, I got to make sure to show your bad side. I got to make sure to expose you. I got to make sure to dog you out privately.
I see what Evan is saying, and God knows he has a history that would allow him to have seen some of this. But the real, an undercurrent, an ugly undercurrent of this whole thing is this. For example, Dr. Lola Moore Johnston is a pastor in the Potomac Conference. Doesn't mean a thing at her worship service because her church is a Black church in a Black context, and it's all administrative. And the unfortunate thing in our denominational fellowship is this, that the tithe base goes beyond the church, and the resources of this denomination exist at a level that churches do not participate in that well. Mm-hmm. That is the reason why. I mean, you can't be a man or a woman with a sense of integrity and a respect for your own self-determination and want to continue to be in a position where somebody in some office somewhere is going to dictate your direction and your resources and control your life. When you get 50 years old, if you respect yourself a little bit, you're going to get tired of that stuff. And that's why guys want to go to the office. We do not respect pastoring in this denomination.
Not at all.
We respect administrative offices. We respect titles, but we do not respect pastoring. And we're going to lose a Lola Moore Johnston and a Justin Pierre and a Keenan Tyler, because at a certain point, you want to be in control as far as it is humanly possible of your destiny and the resources under your control and the legacy that you build for yourself. And our church does not allow for it. And that's one of the reasons why we're losing a lot of people, beyond the fact that when you're already struggling with resources in an urban church, and then somebody calls you out at a suburban church where the lifting power of that church is $2-3 million, it's a very attractive thing to be able to command resources and to have an associate pastor and a staff, an actual staff. But First time I asked for a staff, they gave me a large stick and said, "Go walk with it."
Mercy.
So who's in control? I just asking this, Tally. Is it God? Is God in control, or is it the conference that's in control of your destiny?
That question is, it has a wonderfully innocent naivete. That's like saying, when it rained, who's in control, the weatherman or God? I mean, it's a wonderful question, but the fact of the matter is that while God is sovereign, we live in a world that is greatly impacted by the activities of human beings. Mm-hmm. And we have to occupy and interact at a level that is allowable for us, and so.
Can I follow up to say, my burden, however, to Chuck's question earlier, is that I think that regional conferences have more of an opportunity to participate in changing the experiential dynamic that workers and members have around the crab in the bucket situation, around infrastructure, around business and how it is taken care of. I think that what is being talked about right now is a wake-up call that, if taken, can bring life and vitality in a way that that goes beyond dollars. Mm-hmm. And when I said resources earlier, I want you to understand that I don't mean dollars alone. Opportunities and networking are resources. Mm-hmm. The opportunity to be on platforms and given, seats in different, I would say different groups and different committees are also opportunities. Being, sponsored to the seminary may not be a whole lot of money, but it is an opportunity and it is a resource. Mm-hmm. And if we get stuck in who has more money, and don't look at the fact that the word from Tally can open up the door to be hired from somebody, and that is a resource that sometimes is withheld from some and given to others, then we'll believe that, just because a historically white or a state conference has more dollars, that they have more resources. And I, as a person who has worked in regional and state conferences, who's been educated in predominantly white institutions, Adventist institutions, I know that the resources are those word of mouths, those opportunities to have interviews, those, nudges to say, hey, this place is hiring. And until we are willing to utilize all of our resources to help people feel valuable, then places like Blue Mountain Academy may seem like it's a better place because the structure cuts out some of the nepotistic ways or some of the preferential ways that some other people may feel.
Mm-hmm. I don't think in a very real way. What's important, I think, is that as regional conferences, many of our leadership have become managers and failed to dream about what the future could hold for institutions. If we just become beholden to the fact that, they make more tithe, the reality is we historically have made bricks without straw. God has blessed us to do exceedingly abundantly above what resources could have dictated. The problem is, as I see it, with a lot of our regional conference leadership at this point in time, and I'm speaking very young and very boldly, so please forgive me. I get in trouble a lot for this.
Allegheny East is safe, man.
We have stayed so much within the Adventist system and become beholden to policy, and been unwilling to think beyond policy or think within how can I follow the rules of policy and still get the job done effectively, although technically I may be following the letter of the law while I violate the spirit of that law. Right?
Can you give me an example?
Well,
I'm trying to figure out exactly where.
Sure. I'll give you an example. So I won't name the conference. It's a regional conference. If the union says to this regional conference, here's what we're going to do around education. Here's the policy. Black people historically will then go and enforce that policy on the lower people without asking any questions. And the reality is the Adventist Church is a divine institution, but the policies that have been created and made are oftentimes implemented by traditions of men. Historically, white men have shaped those policies. I've seen in white institutions, they don't follow the rules. because they know these are just policies. And Black people will kill you for dreaming beyond what the policy says.
Or they'll change the rules.
Yeah. Or change the rules in a very real way, right? I think it is high time as regional conferences, we stop depending upon an institution that has demonstrated historically that we are not going to be a priority, and start seeking resources outside the institution to make sure that we can be effective in doing ministry where we are.
What does that look like, Evan?
So I think it looks like, in my context, I go after grants. If I waste my time for 20 years talking about the tithing system of the Adventist Church, I'll never get the job done. It's not going to change. And so what powerful people willfully give up money because they feel spiritually inspired? It doesn't happen. And so I have to say, what can I do to get money into these doors to get the job done? And so in my situation, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had a church, great legacy church. We were in year 40. Calvin Watkins did the baptisms that planted the church. It became extremely conservative over some time, and there were direct oppositions and attacks to make sure everything I did failed. The problem is I'm a Negro, and I'm not scared of anybody. And so I kept walking forward my plan time and time again. I kept going against opposition. I had mentors guiding me. I sought grant funds to renovate the gymnasium. I did various things to make sure money came through those doors to get the job done. We did a $500,000 renovation project. But if I just accepted the rules, I would have got nothing done.
So are you telling me that policy told you that you couldn't get like your own 501(c)(3) to get grants? Is that what you're saying? Because I never heard that before.
Well, that is policy, right? But policy also says that in order for you to get okay, I think I'm back. I thought I froze for a second. In order for you to get your loan from the conference. Now, let me give you an example. My property that I have a gym, a church, and a house connected to my campus. It's worth $4 million. We owed $500,000. Policy says I have to bring $65,000. I have to bring 45% to the table to get the job done. Right? Had to bring 45%. In the real world, that's equity. I have equity in the property. I can refinance, get the job done. Mm-hmm. I had a project that cost a certain amount of money. I just made my contract, my what I need to get done bigger. Right? So I made what I need to get done bigger. So I may have needed X number of dollars. I said I needed $450,000 more than X number of dollars. So I got 100% financing.
Yeah.
Well, Lola, I'm interested in that. I did that too. That's how Germantown Church got there. And that's also how I got a career in radio.
I was like, okay.
But right. Lola, what was that? I mean,
I'll walk back that comment and say that I too have sought grants. I hope that y'all don't think that because I'm in a state conference that I have money sloshing everywhere. I think that that's the way that ministers get work done, is by finding funding resources. I think that is what we are supposed to do. I may have done it a little differently, but I think that what Evan is saying is spot on for everybody. We all have to figure out how to get around walls. We have to figure out how to get things done, because congregations of color are historically underfunded, undercapitalized, and so we are needing to find funding resources. But that is something that everybody can do. But oftentimes there is someone in the infrastructure who will find themselves in the way of what God is trying to do in a congregation. That has, because under the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that being a 501(c)(3), you actually can apply for grants as a Seventh-day Adventist.
Absolutely.
So there shouldn't, the reason why people have to get independent 501c3s is because there's somebody standing in the way. But that being said, everybody should be able to do that. And it should allow for everyone to be successful. And I think, as you're talking about sustainability in regional conferences, I think that every Black school, academy, every Black conference needs a grant writer. Absolutely.
Yes.
You need a grant writer. You have to have one in order to be able to capitalize all the projects that you're having. I just think that there are things that we don't do because it messes with the system and the way that we reward people as we do right now.
And I want to say this is very important with that 501c3. If the church itself gets money, sometimes, and going piggyback off of what both of y'all are saying, sometimes, and I know one example, I won't say the church, the conference can step in and say, hey, that's money using our, that's supposed to come to us and we give it to you. So some churches have opted to get their own completely separate, so the conference can't touch that at all. And so policies, they are out there, but there are ways to get around it.
I was going to ask these questions because, this is a great topic in terms of even funding. When we're thinking about regional conference, especially compared to state conferences, if we have some administrators from our regional conference listening to this conversation and we could give them a piece of advice, this is the first thing that you need to do as a regional conference to kind of turn the tide or improve. What would you guys say that would be?
I would say be willing to take some risk and allow your working staff to explore the areas of their passions. So a lot of times, if a pastor is passionate about children's ministry, there's not a lane in the regional work for them to do that full time, or if it's media or something else. And oftentimes those opportunities are in the state conference territories. And so be willing to allow your people to do what they do best as specialists in the regional work long term.
Well, I think that speaks to the question I asked earlier about a ministry roadmap. You just said, GP, that if a pastor desires to enter into a type of ministry that's perhaps supported by another conference, could that influence that pastor to take a call in that conference? Mm-hmm. Is a ministry roadmap a factor? That's all I'm saying. Yeah. I'm asking.
For sure it doesn't exist.
Seek out a position in a state conference because they have invested in the type of ministry that you're interested
in? I don't know. I don't think I've seen that particular story play out.
Hypothetically.
You mean a roadmap story, Chuck, hypothetically?
Well, maybe I'm not framing the question. I mean, if your desire was to involve yourself in a particular ministry that maybe you've studied for in school and in seminary, and a regional conference, and it could be vice versa. You could be in a state conference and a regional conference offers resources or offers direction for a particular ministry focus.
As a minister I was hired. I was sent to the seminary in 78, hired in 80. So that gives me 45 years. Man, I'm old. I really felt old when Lola Moore said, I remember as a child, I was watching Pastor Tyler Perry. But here's the thing. One of the best ways to make sure that you don't get to do something is to let people know that's what you want to do. And unfortunately, that has been true in our work. If you tell somebody, I want to be a youth man, then you will forever be consigned to the backwaters of the conference behind God's back. I mean, it's almost like a cruel joke they play on you. and that is that your ambition becomes your scaffold. It used to be that way. I hope it's changing.
So I wanna say that the friends that I have, including myself, the individuals who I know who are doing out of the box ministry are by and large in regional conferences. I've seen regional conferences sponsor people to get an MFA. I've seen regional conferences.
It's changing. That's good.
So I think it is changing. So when I think ministry roadmap, Chuck, I have to be honest that the most planning and forethought that I've seen for people in that way has happened in regional context. I have not seen that same type in as great numbers in the state context.
Well, shout out to South Central Conference.
Yeah. I mean, even Allegheny East Conference. I mean, when I was growing up, Pastor Leggett was making movies. And he was a pastor in the Allegheny East Conference. I mean, to be honest, we knew Talia Farrell for singing. I think you were in the industry for a while. I don't know what your personal experience was.
Well, that's after they fired me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean,
just
saying. He's not bitter at all.
Yeah. No. I'll be honest with you. Actually, I didn't get fired. I left because I just couldn't take it anymore. Half of it was my fault. Now, the other half is the next show. But the question I have for you pastors, and it breaks my heart. I mean, especially because you guys are all fine pastors. How many of you see yourselves being a parish pastor in your latter 50s, early 60s? How many of you see that? Yeah.
I want whatever the Lord wants, brother.
Yeah, that's that. And once again, Keenan, I
try. I'm just being honest though.
That's called the spiritual lease.
No, but I'm like, it ain't no spiritual lease. I'm dead serious. Like, I really don't want. I really want whatever God wants, because I feel if I do something that God does not want, I feel I'm going to be in trouble. So I want whatever God
I
wants.
share with you the counsel of the ages, where it says, God says, I will give you the desires of your heart. If you ain't got no desires, it's going to be hard for God to make you happy. And so at some point, you got to be able to say, this is, without vision, people really do perish. So at some point, you got to be able to say, this is what I see for myself. Because ain't nobody going to see it for you, So I'm just saying that what bothers me is that as an Adventist pastor, success is getting out of the pastorate. That's what bothers me. And Evan and Lola and GP, that's why I asked the question, how many of you see yourselves still as a parish pastor in your late 50s, early 60s? I have friends who are pastors in other denominations, and all of their ministerial dreams and visions
in the church
was still as a part of a pastorate. And they did it. My good friend Mark Kelly Tyler is now the historian and archivist for the AME Church. I mean, they didn't have to leave to do it, but for us to have some level of resource and autonomy, we've got to leave the pulpit, and that breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
So why do they do it?
So I think, I was talking to a buddy of mine a couple weeks ago, just talking about the mass exodus from ministry from many of our colleagues.
Oh yeah, that kills me.
And one thing he brought up to my attention that I agree with: the greatest level of influence is not the president; it's the pastor. The greatest level of influence in your local context is the pastor. And people who are going independent are giving up their greatest level of influence, and they're becoming something else, which at times is to their detriment. And so for me, I think when I was in seminary, Lola, GP, Keenan, this may have been your experience too, Tyler, this may have been your experience too. They once we were in the seminary, they scared us by how poor we're about to be. They said, based upon your income, your student loans, you shouldn't be a minister. You need to find another career. They had this tax and income and debt conversation, right? And so I think that I had a conversation with someone in my family who was facing retirement, and they said to me, I can't survive when I retire. And what they were getting in their retirement was more than what I'm making as a pastor.
Yeah.
So I was like, am I that broke? And so for me, I think pastors need to do themselves a favor and become more money wise about what their money can do for them, right? You know, I've been blessed as an individual. I came out of seminary, was sent to Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, I was pastoring outside of Charlotte, but lived in Charlotte, bought a home. The city. And here's the thing that we all must acknowledge, and that is oftentimes lost. And this goes more along with Keenan's logic. God takes care of us, his own. And that's the one thing that we keep forgetting. We want to strategize and plan how much money we can get, how much this we can that. God bless me, moved to Charlotte. It was a blessing, right? I bought a home. When I left seminary, Tyler, I owed the bank money. That's how broke I was. I owed the bank money. I was overdrawn on both accounts, right? The city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, was giving away $15,000 for first-time down payment assistance. Come on, I got my first home for $170,000. I paid for it on one income. Now, the thing is, I didn't do like other people in my family. I didn't move into wealthy territories. I moved south. So I got my first home. I was paying for all my stuff. My wife wasn't working. She was home with the kids. During the pandemic, my property skyrocketed exponentially. I bought a second home. I sold the other one. I'm currently working with someone building 2 homes somewhere else in the territory based on the funds I had out of my first home. And I'm leveraging that money to make money for myself, because my goal is I don't want money to impact my faith. I want to be able to take a call to a conference that doesn't pay as well as South Atlantic, as well as Allegheny East, so that I can go where I feel God is leading me. Because the reality is, I realized my thinking was flawed, because I said, I was getting so many offers. I was like, I ain't going there. It's too expensive to live there. I'm not giving up this interest rate. I'm not going there. No, I'm not doing that. And all my reason was practical. And I failed to take in consideration the spiritual, what God could be trying to do. And my personal opinion right now, the current state of the pastorate, the current state of the Black millennial pastorate is this. We have become too self-focused because we know the legacy and the history of how the church does people, that we are unwilling to expose ourselves so that God can continue his work. And the limitations of the current work of the church, I think, is due to a lack of faith by our generation and by these people. And we're not trusting that God is able to provide and take care of us.
Yeah. Pastor Willis, Pastor Willis, he just said he's willing to come to Albuquerque. Money is not an issue.
That phone, you know.
It's not an issue for him.
Yeah. So I heard someone put in the chat, Havis, all pastors should moonlight. Pastors should be bivocational.
I wonder who says past. I don't know.
And that's a whole other conversation when it comes to pastoring and policy. But there are many gifted pastors like Pastor Lola Johnston who are extremely gifted, who are too gifted to be broke. And so if there's a policy that states that she cannot use her gifts because of her pastorate, and she must choose between using all of her gifts or just remaining a pastor of a congregation, that's why we see a lot of pastors transitioning into entrepreneurship and other things to explore those options and still continue to minister on their own terms and not on the terms of someone else.
But it doesn't have to be that way. And I guess I didn't intend to be middle of the road, but it doesn't have to be that way. There are so many ways to make money that don't involve getting a second job.
Please share. Please share. Please share.
real estate. Evan has already talked to us about real estate, how to do that. You know, we can talk about investing and finding individuals who can give you guidance in the stock market, legal and ethical morals guidance in the stock market. I mean, nobody wants to have to work 2 jobs. Nobody wants to have to leave pastoring after a whole weekend of preaching. I don't know how y'all feel after preaching, but I do not want to go to another job after I finish this. But there are so many ways that things can happen. It requires an overarching umbrella that seeks out that information to tool the pastors so that pastors are not burdened to have to figure that stuff out themselves. What if there was a liaison at a financial institution who came to speak to pastors at workers' meetings about how to use real estate to learn to retire? There are members that we have who know how to do this. I mean, shoot, we know Allegheny East has several individuals who have that information. Why not make that information available to people when they're coming out of seminary? Why not help to foster people purchasing, real estate in Berrien Springs so that from the seminary they're getting rental income? These are things that the overarching conference infrastructure would have access to, things that certain people are making themselves available or availing themselves of, but everybody doesn't know about it because sometimes there are people in the administration who will stand in the way, believing that if a person is able to sustain themselves financially, then they are likely to leave. Give people the information they need so that they can retire with dignity. And, I mean, the retirement program is an excellent program, but it is only one part of a financial strategy. It is not a full financial strategy. Help people to develop a financial strategy from the beginning so that they don't have to be afraid to retire. And I think you'll have a healthier field. Anywhere will have a healthier field.
And NBA does a lot of that, right? They're athletes. A lot of these athletes come from interesting environments. They don't know nothing about money, but they're getting $1 million, $2 million. They don't even know how to spend it. They don't even know what to do with it. And there are people who come to talk with them about how money works, about how this stuff goes, because I think that's what's most important, right? Because your salary is what you live. It should be what you live off of. And your investments is what should make you wealthy, not your career. And I think that's where many people make the mistake.
Well, I know its time is up, but for most ministers, investment is something that happens on 13th Sabbath. So,
oh mercy, yes, wow, this has been some great information.
We got a lot of comments in the chat.
I know.
A lot of comments, yeah. The wife of one of our panelists said that we should invest in Tesla, as Donald Trump mentioned.
Yeah, that was funny. But no, great. All right. So, GP, I guess as we're wrapping up, and I'll let you do your wrap up, but, getting to the end of this conversation, how do we summarize this? What did all of this mean? Where did we land? I'd be interested to know our perspectives at the end of this conversation. Like,
I think that Lola and Evan said that white conferences print green money. So, I'm only kidding. We're I think that race and the construct of a conference is no longer the bellwether as to whether or not you should go to work to pastor a group of people. And I sense you should go where you're called.
Yeah. And I think that regional conferences have a cachet and a value that, if utilized, that people would readily be loyal to. It's more than the story and the history. It is the lived experience and quality of life that I think regional conferences can provide. I think that every person I know who's from the Allegheny East Conference would have given a limb for a call from the Allegheny East Conference. I think we all would have. And that would have not ever had anything to do with whatever the retirement program was or anything. I, go to Delaware. I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? Just there is a cachet that you have that you can utilize if you're willing to really invest in the well-being of people.
Yeah.
I think that you're gonna be okay.
Thank you.
I think race still does matter to a certain extent for some people as relates to the work. I think that the church, as Dr. Moore Johnson is alluding to, really needs to do more to make people feel valued in this work, to sacrifice their time, energy, and talents. And I think that ultimately there are a myriad of answers, and each person is making personal decisions that are for the long-term benefit of their family and how they feel impressed by the Spirit of God in the process.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. We want to thank Dr. Willis and Dr. Johnston for their time and sharing expertise and their thoughts with us. The chat is just overflowing with comments and engagement. And we want to thank all of you for joining us online as well. I want to leave you with a line that says, at the end of the day, leadership transitions are a test of legacy. It's not about where the leader goes, but what they ultimately leave behind. So wherever you are serving, make sure that you are leaving a good legacy behind and being faithful to what God has called you to do. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Tasha and bid our folks a good farewell.
Okay, it's been said already. We definitely want to give our guests another special thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Johnston, Dr. Willis.
Yes, thank you.
Your insight was invaluable, and you can see the comments in the chat. They appreciated what you had to share as well. And you're always welcome at AEC, at least on the Upset podcast. That's all I can.
Dr. Lola, give our regards to your constituents down at Allegheny South.
Will do.
No, thanks for joining us. Thank you once again to everyone who's interacted with us live in the chat and those who will watch this a little later. Let's continue to keep the conversations open, people. The more we talk about things, the more we create understanding. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here next Sunday, same time, same place. Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Take care.